Say it one more time. Say it.
Oh yeah! How sweet it is! The fruits of victory! Oh yeah!
What a team!
What a team!
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Your Honor.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the RTD Sports Podcast. I'm Matt Kiewit, and as always, I'm joined by Savannah Rieger and Zach Joachim. We are buzzing from what some are calling the Haynes King Game, a Hall of Fame game for the ages, folks. Let me tell you. But first, we're going to dive into some Richmond area sports topics. We are fresh off of our second annual 804 Varsity Football Media Day. We welcome 34 schools to the RTD's campus out in Mechanicsville. And guys, I'm still buzzing. I feel like that was a lot of fun and well received.
I'm super proud of the work everyone did. And we'd be remiss not to shout you out, Matt, because Savannah and I and many people at the Times Dispatch did a lot of work the day of to make Media Day happen, but we saw you doing weeks and weeks of preparation over the summer heading into it, communicating with coaches, setting up all the logistics. So thank you for doing all the legwork to make that day happen. The feedback from players and coaches has been great. We split it into 2 sessions this year, so we had a morning and an afternoon session. I think that helped a lot logistically. We had a little bit of a lunch break as well, which was nice.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Because 34 schools consecutively is a ton. We tried to limit everyone to about 5 minutes on stage. And it seems to be an event that players and coaches locally are starting to really look forward to. So any ideas for how we can improve it in the local high school football area, please reach out to us. But we're proud of where it's at and hope it's an opportunity for players and coaches to, practice their media skills and sit in front of a mic and answer questions, just like it is an opportunity for us to get great content ahead of the season.
Yeah, in the days of, not to be not to beat a dead horse, but we live in the age of AI and whatever and technology. It's still, it's so rewarding to create something with your coworkers, and we started from the ground up in it, and we've done it together each year, and the coaches help, and the coaches are encouraging, and it's cool to create something with other people. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so, yeah, as you touched on, Zach, the players and coaches spoke to us for at least 5 minutes apiece. There was a breakout room where, we could if we didn't get to ask him a question, we could chase him down. We also had ESPN Richmond set up in that room. And I believe ABC and our friends at Virginia Video Network were also making reels. And want to say maybe Couch Coach Live set up in there for a bit. In any case, yes, the players and coaches had some things to say. And maybe number one with a bullet among topics, at least for coaches, was the transfer portal, which I think we can just drop the air quotes. No one's lowering their voice anymore when they say transfer portal in regards to high school. They're just talking about kids coming and going as they see fit.
It's just kind of a begrudgingly accepted reality at this point. Does that sound like an accurate depiction, Savannah? I mean, a lot of coaches just talk about it openly, like you said. Matt, I'm sorry, what, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, some have come around, it seems, more than others. Some certainly, I would say, still very begrudgingly.
And I think there's kind of a split there between, like, for lack of better terms, new school and old school, right? Depending on how you operate your program. But everyone, to a degree, has players coming in and out. And that's something, Savannah, that we talked about yesterday when I was writing that story. I was trying to track down and just get a handle on all of the players locally who've switched programs. I included a lot of them in that story. I'm sure I didn't get all of them. Jordan Clark's the running back at James River who had a great season. He's at Benedictine now. Ralphie Puccinelli is the Cadets quarterback now. He was at Glen Allen last year. Jeremiah White kind of turned some heads this week when he left Varina for Highland Springs, and that was like a few weeks before the season started, right? Zion Boisseau, Savannah, which you wrote about in the offseason, was the big name, I think, of the offseason to switch programs. Going from Dinwiddie to Highland Springs, a lot of interest in how the Blue Devils would, from Dinwiddie to Varina, a lot of interest in how the Blue Devils will utilize him this year. I got tripped up trying to figure out Marquise Bullock and Marquise Bullock. I apologize to the Bullock family for that one. I thought one of them left Highland Springs for Trinity, but they're cousins and they spell their name the same way.
How dare you?
My bad, guys. Coy Brown is a quarterback who's been at Clover Hill and Cosby, who's now at Trinity Episcopal, I'm messing them up. There's a lot of teams in here. Who's now at Thomas
Zach, you want me to pick up?
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track, folks.
And it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah,
Dangerous just to go off the dome.
They're everywhere.
Yeah,
they're everywhere. It's like, at least at the college level, there's like a database, and you can like see where everyone who's even entered the portal. We don't have that at the high school level. And it's us just tracking down on social media, honestly, to see who moved. Like, Brendan Ball at Armstrong set up on the Media Day stage on Tuesday, and no idea he transferred. And then I was like, oh, okay, that's a great ad, Armstrong, because he had an amazing season for Mechanicsville last year. I just did not realize you transferred.
And we had a really funny exchange, too, when Armstrong was on stage that I think illustrates the reality that you alluded to, right, Matt, between Jeremy Pruitt and Billy Rudd, because Matoaka was up next. And Pruitt was talking about Kamari Cherry, who's a defensive back and wide receiver, who had a really good year at Matoaka last year and is now at Armstrong. And Pruitt was just kind of like, yeah, sorry, Billy, talking to Rudd on stage with him. And Rudd just shrugged and laughed and, said we're worried about the guys that we have and not the guys that left. What's the other one that I was trying to remember? Savannah, any prominent ones that I missed? We don't have to name all of them, but it has just kind of become accepted. And to be clear, there's no official process for entering it, right? We say transfer portal, but you don't have all of the parameters around it like you have at the college level. But that's what everyone calls it because inevitably there's a trickle-down effect, right? Like what's going on at the college and professional levels is going to be emulated to a degree at the high school level. And this isn't just true for football. Like we've seen it in a bunch of different sports with players at new schools. And coaches seem to really have run out of the mental bandwidth to be fighting it, and it is what it is, and it's going to happen every offseason.
And what did you say the other day, Zach? You said, at the top, at the college level at least, they have kids leave, and you have to address a need. Well, that's what we're seeing in high school, too. Teams are addressing needs that they have after people graduate. And it's just, everyone has been hush-hush over it for years, but I think the simplest way now, especially at 5-5, especially with all these kids reclassifying, that it's time to just talk about it like this openly, and I don't think anyone would argue against that.
Yeah, Landon Hicks was a wide receiver from Manchester last year. That's the one I was trying to remember as a good example that he's at Trinity now after Trinity lost Davion Brown. And that does just kind of seem like, you're addressing a need, right? Deshaun Chisholm was the other big one that I wanted to name because I think that he's going to have a big season at Highland Springs. He was the quarterback at Meadowbrook last year. And so not to Billy Rudd did some great stuff at Meadowbrook last year. Expect Quinn Tobias to continue that momentum, but that's kind of a step up, right? And so you're almost seeing when players in college move up conferences, you have a great season quarterback in Meadowbrook one year, then you have a chance to go play at Highland Springs, right? We're even seeing that, the kind of tiers to it, where if you have a big season at maybe a program at a certain level, then you get interest from some of the powerhouses of the area.
Do we have an FCS of high school football?
We might. We certainly have I think power conferences essentially, right? In basketball, you have a big season in the A10. Then you can go to the SEC, Terrence Hill, right? We're pretty much seeing that with you have a big season at a team that competes for a playoff spot, then all of a sudden you can go try and play for a region championship and maybe state championships.
Yeah, and to put a bow on it, these kids really do look up to and emulate guys in college, guys in the pros. You saw it for a while when I was younger with touchdown dances, when they were trying to curb celebrations in the NFL because the kids are watching. And now you see just literally anything, the older guys are doing, the young people want to do, and that is just transferring. The act of transferring schools has carried over to the younger generation, which is kind of wild. Something you guys touched on that the high school transfer portal has shed light on is the success and the desire to now play for city schools. We got kids from county schools transferring into Armstrong, which if you said that 5 years ago, people would look at you like you had three heads.
Yeah, it's like, as much as we can throw around how good and bad the transfer portal is, I don't know, I think it's good that the kids are willing to transfer into city schools. Like, it revitalizes a community, it brings people together, and having good sports across the board typically means an upward trajectory in less crime and better things to go around all the way. I'm pro them transferring into city schools if they're going to go anywhere.
You've got a great column coming along this front that's gonna or along these lines that's gonna publish this weekend. Savannah, you wrote about the resurgence next week. Excuse me. Yeah. You were writing it yesterday. Incoming soon. It's great stuff. Watch out for it at richmond.com. And Savannah, you did a great story about the resurgence of city schools last year, right? Was that 2 years ago? 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2024. She wrote it.
And so I'll shout out to Charles Scott at Huguenot, Eric Harris at Thomas Jefferson, and Jeremy Pruitt at Armstrong. I'll just read that graph that I sent you yesterday, Matt, to include in that story to kind of illustrate this. Huguenot's 30-6 with 3 playoff appearances and 4 playoff victories since Charles Scott took over on Forest Hill Avenue ahead of the 2023 season. The Falcons were a local power in the 90s and 2000s. They had struggled with years. That turnaround was quick and fast, and now they're competing for region championships. Eric Harris is 29-7 with 4 playoff wins in 3 seasons. And he's the 5th Thomas Jefferson coach to kind of build on what's been a decade-long resurgence there that began when Chad Hornick was the coach there, and his tenure ended after the 2015 season. And then Armstrong had gone 6-47 over 5 seasons from 2015 to 2019 before Jeremy Pruitt took over on Cool Lane in 2021. Since he took over, they're 37-22 with 5 playoff appearances and 5 playoff wins in his 5 seasons in charge. So that's really impressive from those 3 coaches. Savannah, you talked to Dakota Reeves, right? The new coach at John Marshall, who's hoping to kind of follow that trend.
Really impressive guy.
Yeah, and I'm bought into Dakota Reeves, just talking to him for a little bit at Media Day, and I talked to him for a little bit after he got off the podium at Media Day. And he's a Charles Scott guy. He coached with Charles Scott at Life Christian. He's coached with Charles Scott the entire way through at Huguenot up to this point. He's learned how much talent is in the city, how fostering it is good and beneficial and sends these kids in the right direction, and just what successful programs in the city of Richmond can do. He's talked about how he's seen the success at TJ, at Armstrong. Obviously, yeah, he's been there for Huguenot. And he's like, we can do the same thing at John Marshall if we are committed. And, I believe in that. I've seen what Charles Scott, Huguenot was 1-9 in Charles Scott's first season. And the next year they turned around and were 8-3. Year before. But they were still 1-9. Obviously some kids came over with Charles Scott from Life Christian, but at the same time, that's still a massive turnaround for a program that, like Armstrong and TJ, hadn't seen a lot of success on the football field. And, he's talked about, he's like, we gave Verona a run for their money in that first year when we were 8-3, going on the road in the region semifinals at Verona. And I believe Dakota Reeves can do the same. And Marshall's a team that's had participation issues in the past. Last year, they had to forfeit 3 games because they didn't have enough kids to safely field a team because of ejections and suspensions. And, with some of this discipline that I know Charles Scott has, that I know Dakota Reeves has learned from in that regard, I'm bought in. I'm all in on Dakota Reeves.
As am I. He's kind of one of those coaches that like you just talk to for a little bit and you get positive vibes and you're like, yeah, I would go compete for you, and you seem like a guy that can motivate young kids, get them excited to be involved with the program. Their new helmets are really cool, and I think that stuff like that really matters, right? Like when you're trying to build up momentum, just having like TJ's resurgence started when Hornick got a bunch of was able to generate donations from the Viking like booster club. I think they're called the Viking Fund. And so they got the Vikings new uniforms. They got a new weight room and everything. Their facilities were all renovated. And like that, you have to start with that kind of investment. Shout out to our friend Lee Mary at Ball and VA podcast, who had like talked about that with Coach Reeves, right? Like he knows the John Marshall community really well. And they were talking about like, hey, this, get alumni involved to buy into this program to help support these kids and get them excited about coming out. So I believe Reeves is going to do that. It starts with little things like that, like the helmets, because then the kids are talking about it at school. They look good out on the fields, and that gets some investment from them. One of my favorite games I've ever covered, John Marshall and Charles City a few years ago. Both programs that have had participation issues, like they've had to forfeit games. And they hadn't, I forget what it was. Both, I think, maybe hadn't won a game in a couple years when I covered that out at Charles City a few years ago. And when John Marshall won that game, like it looked like those kids had won the Super Bowl. They were so excited, and I loved that so much. And I talked to their coach afterward, who said, this is the first like competitive football game a lot of these kids have won in their lives, like on the field with refs and everything. And you could see that joy, you could see that exuberance, and and I fully expect Reeves to start bringing that to the north side.
Something that stood out to me about all these guys is no matter what has happened in the past, they are bringing the mindset that we belong with everybody else. I didn't have Dakota Reeves' contact info before media day. And he took it upon himself to reach out to me and said, hey, we would like to attend. Here's my contact info. Please give me a call. And I was ecstatic, A, to hear from him, and B, that shows what he's all about. He doesn't care that they didn't finish the season last year. He's like, we belong on that stage with Varina, Highland Springs, Huguenot, etc. And I think that sends a message to the kids as well.
You brought this up in your column too, Matt, the run that Armstrong does. I think really like strong example in the area of kind of everything that we're alluding to. Like they do an off-season training run and they go by like Mosby Court, like Gilpin Court, right? And they're trying to get their players out in the community in their uniforms to show everyone that this is a safe environment to be a part of. And that it's going to help with community relations. And like a lot of these coaches have said, genuinely, lowering crime rates like in their communities, and getting kids in the right place after school. And I think we all have a great deal of admiration for what those coaches do in that respect.
I think a common through line for each of them is they realize there ain't any help coming for their cities or their schools. And if it does come, great, but there's no help coming, and so they need to make it happen. And they're huge advocates and cheerleaders for their programs. They know, they know how to get the alumni fired up. There's I want to say there's also some athletic booster groups that they're active with. They know how to make things happen for their program when truth be told, funds are tight for Richmond Public Schools.
And in my experience, the alumni groups are stronger for the city schools than in the county schools or anywhere. I'm from Loudoun County, Virginia, and what alumni groups I see and like the support I see from the city schools here is leaps and bounds better than anything I ever saw growing up. And these people walk up to me and say hi to me when I show up to games. Usually it's me walking around introducing myself to others, but they see my press pass when I walk through security at Huguenot. They see my press pass and they're like, Savannah, you're with the paper. Oh my gosh, hi. Here's when I played at Huguenot. Oh my gosh, we're so excited that the team's really good. And that's just like something I never saw growing up, and it's so amazing. Charles Scott said, at media day, he was like, "Hey, listen, if you guys are here at our football games cheering for us on Friday nights, then you're not out. Then you're not out, where there's crime. You're being safe. You're here, and the kids are here. They're safe here at our games, and that's just amazing to hear openly out in public." And I mean, when I did the story a few years ago, Pruitt talked to me about those new Armstrong uniforms. Those came in 2 or 3 years ago, and how excited the kids were for those new uniforms. And it makes me think about when I was in high school and we got new uniforms, wait, that was exciting. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand it's uniform. Oh, wait, when I got a new field hockey helmet or a new field hockey jersey, that was really exciting. When my name was on it, that was so exciting. And so it's like, just things like that are so important.
Yeah, I remember in high school playing baseball, not the same thing, but to your point about new, different jerseys, part of the collection of jerseys we got for baseball at the beginning of the year included these ugly vests that did not match with any of our pants or socks or anything like that, but vests were like kind of in at the time. I forget why. Maybe some college teams had cool vests, or like maybe the All-Star game. I think maybe the All-Star game jerseys were these cool looking, vest style baseball jerseys, whatever. The whole team was like, why aren't we wearing these vests? We need to wear the vests. He's like, the font doesn't even match our school letters anymore. Like, these are like, we're not wearing vests. And we kept on him, and he's like, all right. If you guys win like 12 games in a row, you can wear the vests. Which, to win that for a high school baseball team, to even a good one, to win that many games in a row is very hard. And
Did you guys get it?
We got it.
Nice.
We got the vests. We won our game in the vests, and we lost the very next one.
I should have said 20 in a row.
Yeah.
Should have said 13.
Yeah, it was like the Patriots' undefeated season. They just like all our effort was to get those vests, and then but yeah, and one more thing about Pruitt, that guy's like, I love that guy. Last year when we were trying to get media day off the ground, we'd be texting, and I'd say something like, oh yeah, like, hopefully people are into this. Like, I don't know what to expect. And he's like, don't worry, man. This is going to be awesome. People are going to love this. It's going to be the best day. You'll see. And he would just send me stuff like that all along. And then after the event, he was like, what'd I tell you? So,
that's so awesome.
Yeah. I'll always love Pruitt, man. He's the best. I know we're supposed to be unbiased, but that guy's the best. And then sticking with media day, another thing we heard a lot, and it kind of gave us a story idea when we were just doing some, pre-discussion for the pod about 20 minutes ago now. We want to trace the origin of the phrase, the standard is the standard. We heard it over and over again at media day. It reminded us of, former Steelers coach Mike Tomlin, whose Tomlinisms have gone viral over the years. I think none epitomize him more than the standard is the standard. I think that's what everybody or most people know him for saying. And gosh, half the coaches said something along those lines. And it got us thinking, Tomlin went to William and Mary from Hampton Roads, right?
Yeah, he's from Hampton.
And coached at VMI. And we're starting to wonder if the standard is the standard came from someone in Virginia at some point. So that's a story that we are going to chase.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin was born in Hampton, grew up in Newport News, graduated from Denby High in Newport News, and then played as a wide receiver at William & Mary, and then he was also an assistant at VMI. So some deep Virginia ties. When I looked it up, it says that the phrase is widely attributed in terms of mass popularization to him and Kobe Bryant, who said it as well. So I think that just a lot of coaches in Virginia, there's probably coaches all over the country who say it, but I think it's particularly prominent here because of Mike Tomlin. What does it mean to you guys? Well, I know that we could probably get existential here about diving into it. I mean, it is a good example like of coach speak, but it means something. It does. What do you guys think of? What does it mean when you hear the standard is the standard?
Just consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency.
I mean, I've heard it at JMU so many times.
just not making an exception for, any excuse really. Just saying, this bar is non-negotiable. This is where we're at all times, basically.
Accountability to those who came before, I think, right? It makes me think of Kevin Tucker's phrase at Thomas Dale that he says all the time about playing for those who came before. And I think to me, it means like when you're wearing that jersey, you have a responsibility to everyone who's worn it in the past, And so you hear it at a program like Highland Springs. And so what you're kind of telling those players is like all of this success that we've had in years past, like that responsibility, that accountability lies on your shoulders right now. Right. And it's you have to uphold that standard. And so I think you're kind of reminding people of the history of a program and what you're beholden to in terms of expectations. And it's not just winning, like it's how you operate culturally. Right. So I think that's like the root of what coaches mean when they say it. Like it's not like, oh, we have to win this many games, we have to get in the playoffs. It's you have to buy into what this program is about and what our cultural identity is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. When I, when I hear it, I think about I first heard it not at the high school level. I first heard it at JMU because I grew up going to JMU football games and my parents playing radio shows in the car and listening to either Mickey Matthews or Everett Withers or even Signetti's press conferences in the car on the way home from stuff. And so I heard that phrase all the time. And so to me, the standard is a standard always meant did mean success. It meant okay, this has always been a successful program. You need to keep being successful, but that doesn't just mean on the field success. You need to have success in the classroom and you need to be on time for things. And those are lessons football teaches you. It's lessons sports teach you. And so it didn't matter that Mike Houston was coming in and Everett Withers had a pretty decent season the year before, but he was coming in thinking, we're gonna be even better, and that's why I always think mentally, I'm like, okay, new coach comes in, the team has to be even better, but they have to also live up to that standard because of all those JMU coaches I heard for years and years before.
Quick tangent that's relative to that. I'm sorry that you made me think of because you mentioned Signetti. Y'all see what the Purdue AD said this week? That
yeah.
Viral. Yeah, how funny was that?
If you don't want to win championships, go to Indiana. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how.
Does he know that Signetti will run up 30 set for 55 points on him in the first half?
I was gonna say they're gonna get. What's the line for that game? It's
Indiana minus 30.5.
Yeah,
taking the first half spread.
Yeah, give me the first half over under. Over will hit. Then
I don't know how much others besides people on this call will get a kick out of this, but the subplot of Media Day, the giant chicken.
It was really funny to us.
it really came out of nowhere, and then as mysteriously as it arrived, it was deflated before our eyes.
On with the wind.
Dude, another Jeremy Pruitt shout out, who I believe opened his press conference by saying shout out Chicken Fiesta.
Yep.
I will not forget Zach and I walking from our newsroom desk across the little catwalk to get down to where the Media Day happened. And we just walk out and I'm like, Zach, is that a chicken? And it's just...
Yeah, so to summarize it here, Chicken Fiesta was our food sponsor for the event. Great sponsor. very generous with their time and their food.
Tacos.
They fed, well over 100 people. They had people there all day long. But when they were setting up at the very beginning of the day, obviously we had the tables, we had the drinks in the coolers. They got their trays with the food out on the tables. And then out comes a 30-foot tall inflatable chicken that they blew up right before our eyes. And they told us, yeah, if the air pump is too loud, just let us know and we'll take it down. And the air pump was loud, but we just couldn't ask them to take it down. There it is. If you can see Zach's screen.
showing a live image.
For anyone unfamiliar with the giant chicken, there's your frame of reference.
And, we, in the name of the giant chicken, we battled through microphone feedback. We battled through the
We
noise.
really did.
It was loud, and that was an issue. In hindsight, maybe it should have been like in the entrance hall. I thought about that afterward, that maybe that would have been like a good compromise. Our awesome intern Audrey got a video of the uninflated chicken getting wheeled out, and so Matt, you had a lot of fun with that on Twitter.
Yeah, I think I dropped in the line. I forget who died in Saving Private Ryan. It's like, tell them I led a good life. Tell them I was a good man.
Was that Vin Diesel? Was that his death? I remember that one being really emotional in Saving Private Ryan.
I haven't seen that movie in so long. I just remember the line. Yeah, and so by the afternoon session event. I don't know who. I don't blame them necessarily. Eventually, someone had enough of the noise, but nobody announced that they were taking the chicken down. So, the Chicken Fiesta employee, they set up the trays for the afternoon group. They refill the napkins and the forks, and then they just unplug the chicken, and it starts to, and here it comes. It's like about to collapse on the table with all the food on it, and a couple of us had to kind of bat it away. So
shout out to the players who tried to help them disassemble it. It was like immediately looked at the Chicken Fiesta employees and were like, how can we help? Whoever their parents or coaches are, you've taught those kids well. But
I think it was Manchester.
J.R. Tucker too, I think, tried to run over and help. It was a couple of them, yeah. And it was so funny because the kids in the afternoon session, a lot of them didn't see it blown up. So they walk into the hall and their first impression of media day is this uninflating, dying, inflatable chicken. That was hilarious.
Indeed.
Shout out
Probably
Chicken Fiesta, though. That food was good.
That was awesome. Kept us fed all day. And I think that'll put a bow on Media Day until next year. But that wasn't the only high school news of the week. We got some realignment news that has us already looking ahead. Savannah. Savannah's got a story at richmond.com and in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Tell us what's going on with realignment in the VHSL.
I love writing about realignment.
Yes, she does.
I love it. I got almost 1,000 words written in 30 minutes yesterday because I love writing about realignment. So the VHSL goes on realignment cycles because obviously new schools arise, new schools move, and enrollment increases and decreases every year as a result. So every 4 years, they have to go through cycles and pretty much determine if one school can still be Class 3, should it be Class 2, should it be Class 4, just to make everything even across the board. We see it a lot, and we see more movement in Loudoun County and Nova typically because there's so many new schools popping up all the time. But here, when we get to these news cycles, we see some more movement in the Richmond area. And so we had about 8 schools be affected by it. Now, it's all proposed right now. Schools have until, I believe, the 10th to request an appeal if they think, oh, no, we shouldn't be here, or no, we should move up, or we should move down, which is typically the one you get more. But right now, proposed, we have 8 schools affected. 6 of them would change classifications. One of them is Westridge, the new school, which would come in at Class 5, so it would be in Region 5C. And then Maggie Walker would move regions from Region 3B to Region 3A. That 3A is the region with New Kent and Colonial Heights and Hopewell. Highlighting it, I think, is Petersburg moving up to Class 4. For football, for boys basketball, that's a fun move. Obviously, the Crimson Wave just won their first state title in 52 years with Ty White. And the All-Metro Player of the Year, Latrell Almond, at the Siegel Center against Lake Taylor, who's also moving up to Class 4 this past season. And so, obviously, Ty White's basketball teams are always talented, always a tough out, but to get them into the Class 4 is fun. They're going to be in Region 4B, which puts them up against Verina. Notably one of the powerhouses of that region in recent seasons. And they'd be there for football too, obviously, so that puts Jerome Mathis and that resurgence of Petersburg football up against the juggernauts and arguably the toughest region amongst all 6 classifications. So it would put them up against Verina, Huguenot, Dinwiddie, and so that Region 4B is about to get a lot more fun. Other notable, we can talk about that in a second, but other movements, Midlow is going up to 6. That's fun. Actually balances Region 6A out a little more for us. We were down to only like 4 or 5 schools in that region. Mechanicsville, Patrick Henry, Ashland, and Richmond High School for the Arts are all moving down to Class 3. They'll be in Region 3A. And obviously that new school, Westridge, is going to be in Region 5C, but so is Monacan. Monacan's moving up as well. And I think that's all of them, Zach.
I think you got all of them, and Petersburg certainly is the highlight. That's really fun, the prospect of them being in 4B for both football and basketball. I think there's probably, who were some of the winners, who stayed where they are, but, the competitive complexion of their region changed. I think of, a Hopewell, right, which probably has because you said Lake Taylor moved up as well, so yes. That probably gives them a clearer path. And for I think of John Marshall boys basketball when Ty White was there, and all of Class 2, had a strong reaction to him leaving John Marshall, right? And so I think all of Class 3 boys basketball saw this and probably breathed a sigh of relief because they don't have to try and deal with Petersburg anymore. And, a potential, we talked about this yesterday, Verina basketball could probably give them a strong game and a run for their money in a potential region championship game. So that's really fun. But I think there's some Class 3 schools that are definitely excited that they stayed where they are because they have kind of a clearer path to region and state championships now. Thank you for being on top of that. It's a lot.
It's okay. I love it. And statewide, Princess Anne and Menchville are both going down to Class 4. First of all, Region 4A is massive now. But with Princess Anne and Menchville going down to Class 4, that is, as we talked about, some teams are celebrating with realignment. That is amazing news for our Class 5 girls basketball teams. Princess Anne and Menchville, the entire time I've been at the TV pretty much, have just absolutely dominated Class 5. The only time I've seen a Richmond team give Princess Anne a run for their money was Lady Grant in the state championship in Class 5, and I want to say it was 24. It was whatever year Manchester and Dale met in the final too. And that game was really close. Lady Grant put that team on her back and pretty much told me who our we had to do All-Metro Co-Players of the Year that year. But, those teams going down to Class 4, if I'm Glen Allen, if I'm Highland Springs, I am just so excited.
You know who I thought of to that point is our good friend Franklin Harris, who's got to be kicking himself right now because longtime girls basketball coach at Highland Springs, and they got to a few state finals and state semifinals over those years, right? There was some great Springers teams. They just couldn't get past Princess Anne and that juggernaut program down there. And so Franklin Harris is who retired after this last season is probably going, you got to be kidding me. I finally stepped away and now Princess Anne goes down classifications. So that was pretty funny. Shout
also,
out.
if I'm teams in Region 5C and girls volleyball too, I'm like, oh no, Midlow's going up to 6. That's a shame. Midlow's won the region 4 or 5 years in a row. I've never seen them lose a region tournament game since I've been here.
A great softball potential matchup
Yeah.
created by this too, right? You said Midlow and Grassfield, now both in 6A, two
Yep.
state championship caliber programs.
Yep, Grassfield won the Class 6 title last year. And Glassfield and Glen Allen, when Glen Allen was in 6 2 years ago, went back and forth. Like, Glen Allen lost that region championship game to Grassfield and later beat them in the state championship game. Midlow going up there they immediately become a front runner in that region. Midlow obviously is a storied softball program. They're fun to watch and play against, and it'll be a new challenge for them, which I'm excited to see how they handle that as well.
Shout out to Quinn Tobias at Meadowbrook, who just sent us his football preview. That just came into the inbox, Savannah, after you sent out the preview forms yesterday. So we'll throw in a little reminder to all the coaches. Savannah put in a lot of work yesterday getting those all sent out. Please fill those out and return them back to us as soon as you can so we can get going on season previews for the fall.
Shout out Quinn. We're going to take a quick break here, and then on the other side, we're going to get into this NCAA injunction. Zach will break it all down before we dive into quick hits. Coming back here, we are going to talk about do you consider this ongoing, Zach? This NCAA eligibility injunction?
Yeah, I'd say it's up in the air because the NCAA is seeking a stay. Yeah, well, can I give Savannah a chance to sing here for a second, though?
He'll get me singing like one line. That's all he gets from me. Injunction, junction, what's your function?
That's what you both
That's all
said
it
when I started talking about this story, and it's what popped into my head the first time that this dropped. So, yeah, I'd say it's ongoing. The NCAA is seeking a stay. So last week's ruling by Judge Charlotte Sweeney of the U.S. District Court of Colorado has sent college sports, it was already in a state of flux, but into even more of an uncertain state of pretty chaotic flux. It allows high school athletes who graduated in 2022 who previously exhausted their 4 years of eligibility another year based
College
on the
athletes.
5-for-5. College athletes, excuse me. We're switching topics here, my bad. Based on, but it was their high school year of graduation was 2022. So they adopted the 5-for-5 policy earlier this year. Essentially, this was players who had just exhausted their 4 years of eligibility suing, saying that the 5-for-5 rule should apply to me, and I should get an extra year, which means that if they're still under 24 years old, then they can come back and get another year. So I talked to Phil Martelli at VCU for a general overview of how coaches are handling this and what his reaction to it was. VCU has a roster spot open. They've 14 of 15 filled right now. He said it's very unlikely that they would add a player granted another year by the ruling. Here's what Phil had to say about it. The overarching thing with all this is the fact that the courts can come in and just make rulings. It really handcuffs everybody, most of the NCAA. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but the NCAA can create a rule that a court can then come in and say yes or no to. It makes it hard to operate under a set of rules that then in the blink of an eye changes, but then you don't know if it is actually changed or not because the NCAA is going to appeal it and who knows what happens. It makes it really difficult. Everyone feels handcuffed, coaches, players, the NCAA. What are we going to do and how are we going to operate this way? So there are a lot of coaches around the country who, if they had struggled to put together a roster, I think the example that comes to mind for a lot of people was Will Wade at LSU, right? There were a few players that he was trying to bring in with eligibility questions, and now they kind of have a second crack at it because you have a bunch of players who, as it stands, and again, the NCAA is seeking a stay on this, so it might not even come to fruition, but are eligible for another year. VCU's two guys who exhausted their eligibility last year, Jadrian Tracy and Barry Evans. It only applies to Evans because Evans turns 24 in September. Tracy turned 24 in, I believe, May. That was in the story somewhere, but he's too old. So it applies to Barry Evans, who could potentially come back, but Phil Martelli said it's very unlikely that they fill that last roster spot. You also can't enter the portal if you're a player unless you already had. And so these players' only option is to come back to their previous programs. They can't just hop into the portal and then go somewhere else. So you got coaches around the country right now trying to kind of frantically figure out how to handle this. And nobody knows. Football has to move really fast because obviously their season is impending and starting up in a couple weeks here. Basketball, I think you'll see more reaction to it because they have more time to build rosters around it. But it's college sports these days, right? I think that Charlie Baker came out with a statement afterward, reiterating what we've heard a lot from the NCAA hierarchy, which is that they're begging Congress to step in and provide some guide rails here, because we're at the point that most of the administrative people in the NCAA are saying, please help us at the federal level set guide rails here, because any kind of rule that we try and institute, the courts are then jumping in because players sue, and so we have no control over our own rules. So it's a wild west, guys. It's craziness.
Indeed, it almost feels like what they say this is a free country. Well, who's to say that like the NCAA can enforce a rule when it's not law in the like anywhere else in the country? So it's really it's really weird that all you have to do is sue, and the court's like, yeah, that's not a law.
That's kind of how the VHSL sometimes gets caught up with too. Sometimes they make a rule, and then they get sued, and then the rule goes away.
And they lose.
And they lose.
Yeah, who is it? We can discuss this, I think, on the podcast, right? What's the school called? Liberty Academy?
Liberty Christian Academy?
Liberty Christian Academy. Thank
LCA,
you.
moving down the class 2.
Yeah, which is wild. But a few years ago, they are a private school, pretty much, and I forget all the parameters around this. They weren't allowed in the VHSL. They took the VHSL to court, and they won. And so now, I know that aggrieves a lot of people that a school that operates like a private school is in the public school ranks, and now down in Class 2, which is a shame for everyone in Class 2, because I imagine they'll win a bunch of state championships down there. But that is a good example at the high school level of they tried to institute a rule, and the courts came in and overturned them, and then they're handcuffed. I will say, too, I understand the legal argument here. I do. Like, I'm not blaming Judge Sweeney. Like, this is an infrastructure issue. I get the players saying, like, hey, why doesn't this rule apply to me? I believe they agreed to it within the academic year, right? So if I'm one of those players who just exhausted your 4 years of eligibility and you're saying, based on this 5-for-5 rule, I could play another season, why does this not apply to me? I get that, right? And from a legal standpoint, I understand the ruling. I see the logic of it. So again, like Phil said, we're not saying right or wrong here. We're just saying we can't have this constant state of flux where everyone's trying to operate through a minefield of regulations.
No doubt. Yeah, I guess, yeah. And with my point, I wasn't saying that, this rule is, the courts sort of strong arming the NCAA, even though they kind of are, but it makes sense. It makes logical sense here. There have been more extreme cases where, the NCAA seemed to have an okay rule and the courts have it's like, no, you can't do that. But moving on, I think to the moment we've all been waiting for. The 2026 Hall of Fame game between the Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. Some are calling it the Haynes King Game.
God,
Gang.
What a generational game.
You dropped this, King.
What did we see?
Man, Matt and I have been looking forward to this game for at least 6 weeks. Okay?
Yeah.
The World Cup started and Matt's like, when's the Hall of Fame game on? So
it may or may not have started out as a bit, and when everyone had World Cup fever, Savannah and I were babbling about the Hall of Fame game. We would say, what's August 6th, Zach? What do you know? And of course,
at 8 p.m. on NBC.
Yeah, of course he was like, no. What are you talking about? I was like, the NFL season. It begins.
I was locked in on the World Cup, and a huge credit to these two, because I was one of those people who, as akin to a lot of people who are thinking, it's the Hall of Fame game. Like, it's the worst of preseason games, and it's a scrimmage and everything. This was, as you said, Savannah, this is a better football game than the Super Bowl from a competitive standpoint. It was great. And so shout out to both of you who were hyping it up for weeks. It may have started as a bit, but you were genuinely excited for it, and you both watched it, and I stand corrected.
Yeah, it was a hill that we forced ourselves to die on.
Yeah, it was.
But
It was so good.
I expected, yes, I did expect a much more low-scoring affair. I did not take into account the mayhem that Haynes King would create with his legs. And, that is something that you can take with you if some people like to bet on the preseason, not saying I do or have. But something you can keep in mind is if you've got one team with a scrambling quarterback, they do have an edge because the defenders out there are already third and fourth string guys. They don't have their communication down, or they just don't communicate with each other. Throw in a guy who's going to take off running when all the defensive backs have their back to the quarterback because they're covering receivers. That and they're already having a tough time communicating. You can do some real damage, and we saw that last night.
Yeah, Collinsworth on the broadcast last night when they were in that 2-minute drill at the end of the game to, go out and win it. He's like, you're in the huddle right now. This is the Hall of Fame game. You're looking at the guys in the huddle and you don't know them. Yeah. These are not guys you know.
Here's the guy, and you don't know him.
There in the first quarter, there was a time where Collinsworth went, "Oh, you know what he looks like," and Tirico's like, "Don't start doing this now." But anyway, Collinsworth's like, you don't know the guys in the huddle. So, when you have a guy like Haynes King out there who can run the ball, that makes a difference. I mean, I watched Carson Beck do head first dives instead of slides last night too. That it really puts in perspective how these are rookies. They are going to have to learn how to correctly slide in the NFL. But, you see him just take off. He's like the Ralphie Puccinelli of the NFL. He just absolutely runs that ball if he sees an opening, and he won the game. He kept his knee off the ground before the ball broke the plane to win the game. Though in the back of my mind, I was like, what happens if the Hall of Fame game has to go to OT? Free football.
A great reminder that the Cardinals have not forgotten how to lose in spectacularly confounding fashion.
They haven't. They're back to their roots. Was Tirico talking about the 2027 NFL draft for the Cardinals during this game? Yes. Were we like a quarter into the season? Also, yes.
They got a step ahead on the tanking. They're ahead of the curve here.
Tirico's like, Collinsworth, what's the toughest division? And Collinsworth's like, the NFC West, which, unfortunately for the Cardinals, is their division. Though, after watching Carson Beck last night, Jacoby Brissett better watch his back.
Yeah, that looked good.
Hey, Keaton Slovis, it's kind of cooking as well. 9 for 10, 106 yards, 10.6 yards per attempt. Touchdown, no interceptions. Carson Beck, 15 for 19, 188 yards, 10 yards per attempt, just about. Also a touchdown. I don't know what you take away from that, but better than I thought they'd do.
To me, it was fun seeing them score in the red zone because Collinsworth was like, they haven't practiced the red zone yet. They've been practicing like a week. They don't know what they're doing in the red zone yet. So to see them actually being able to like connect and run the ball was awesome.
There was actual chunk plays. They were scoring touchdowns in the red zone. You never see that in the Hall of Fame game.
No.
That requires man, and being on the same page and skill and just man, I was blown away.
It's a reminder, too, that, like, for the Super Bowl example, part of this was because the Seahawks were a significantly better team at that juncture, right, than the Pats, and so it wasn't a very competitive game, but...
Just at that juncture.
Just at that juncture. Yeah. Not anymore. Well, hey, we were ahead of schedule, okay, and that's a very fair assertion. It was surprising that we were there in the first place. New Patriots dynasty incoming. Anyway, games at that point, across various sports, like the World Cup final, too, can be very sterile, right? Because of the level of preparation, that and the margins are so fine that both teams are so scared to make that mistake, right? That pick six that might decide the game, or that back pass in a World Cup final that leads to a bad goal. And so it can result in games that aren't that entertaining a lot of the time from a competitive standpoint. But then when you have the complete opposite in a game like this, where the nobody really cares that much who wins, and the players barely know each other, and sometimes they're like, it's backyard football a little bit, right? And they're drawing something up in the sand and kind of going back to just their roots of rec ball, and you're just playing and having fun out there. It makes it more entertaining because you get missed assignments, you get people ad-libbing, and it can make for just some really fun sporting content because all of a sudden, the stakes are so much lower that it makes the product more entertaining, in a kind of inverse way of what you might expect on service level. Also, I play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and maybe this is a segue into our next topic, but I forgot that the preseason is really fun for Dynasty because you can see a bunch of guys who might have gone undrafted, who were like 5th and 6th round picks, who are just trying to make rosters. And, identifying those guys who are going to turn into something is such a huge component to Dynasty Fantasy Football. So I enjoyed it from that perspective because it's huge in Dynasty to see, how does Carson Beck look? Is this a viable player long term for me to have on my roster who could be an NFL quarterback, right? So I didn't watch it live, but I enjoyed looking back on some of the highlights and then going to check my Dynasty waiver wire and go like, is this guy rostered? So it was fun from that perspective too.
You didn't watch all the pregame for the Hall of Fame game? What's up with that? I sure did. That's also where they reminded me that the NFL season starts on a Wednesday, which I did not realize it starts on a Wednesday.
How is it? That's going to be crazy.
That threw me off. I was like, I would have missed that game in my pick and pool because I would have assumed it was a Thursday. I'm so happy you told me it was a Wednesday.
I will say that was quite an outlier for the Hall of Fame game. I was beating the drum for the last 6 weeks. Bet the under, bet the under, bet the under. And boy, was I wrong.
What's your line for Pat's Seahawks? It's in Seattle. NFL season opener.
42.5.
Or I was like Seahawks
minus 2.5.
Okay.
I was gonna say 4. Yeah, I was gonna say Seahawks 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4.5. So thank you for the respect to my Pats, who I do think that'll be a closer game than the Super Bowl was.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Well, gang, I think that'll about do it for us. The three of us have an appointment at Buttermilk and Honey that we're very much looking forward to, which means
go pick up Matt here. Yeah.
Yeah, which can only mean one thing. All Metro is all done. You can see those at richmond.com. You can see everything we just talked about at richmond.com, except for the stuff that we said is not published yet. But almost everything we talked about on this episode is up at richmond.com for you to feast your eyes upon.
Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs got paid. They should obviously be at the top of your early fantasy football drafts. The 49ers substation is hilarious. And the injuries are not hilarious. I hope Ricky Pearsall heals up here. But
the meme was at first pretty, inside, NFL fans who were online knew the meme. Now the meme is mainstream.
And I'm so bought into the conspiracy theory at this point. Like, that substation is doing something, man. How do they keep dropping like flies? And then Matt, your Dodgers got Tariq Skubal at the trade deadline for a bag of chips, which is confounding. And the Red Sox gave up a pretty good haul of prospects, but got Adley Rutschman. They're the hottest team in baseball. This turnaround's getting pretty historic. I think 25-4 in their last 29 at this juncture. They've gone from 10 games under 500 to 11 games over in about a month, which is absurd. And walk off last night, swept the White Sox. I think in 13 innings, 12-11. Caleb Durbin. It's getting ridiculous. This is historic.
The Sox kept coming back in that game, too.
We'll see if the Dodgers can win another game. They might ruin baseball and never win a game the rest of the season simultaneously.
Matt, a Red Sox-Dodgers World Series, which I'm sure is on the betting lines right now, pretty possible, would be really fun for us, wouldn't it?
I'd be going... Another subplot that maybe no one else will appreciate but me But at my first job in journalism at the Bulletin in Bend, Oregon, they wanted to hook me up to the company's Twitter page so I could post stuff. And they did not ask me what my handle was. They just searched Matthew Kiewit because they figured there would be no others, I guess. And there was one other, and they managed to connect that Matthew Kiewit to the company's Twitter. They soon after figured out that they made a mistake and fixed it and hooked me up. But that inspired a coworker and I to kind of cyber stalk the other Matthew Kiewit, who turns out to be a Boston sports fan. And so later that season, obviously later that year, the Patriots beat the Rams in the Super Bowl, and then the Red Sox beat the Dodgers in the World Series. And my coworker every time would be like, "Man, Boston Matthew Kiewit got you again." So I need to get one on Boston Matthew Kiewit. He's got me down 2-0 here.
You're down the series.
Yeah, I need one back. So I'd welcome a Red Sox Dodgers World Series or a Rams Patriots World Series. Bring it on.
Hostility in the office.
Super Bowl, bring it on. In any case, hopefully I didn't bore you with the tale of two Matthew Kiewits. Thanks for listening to the RTD Sports Podcast. You can look for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Check back next week for another episode. You can email us at rtdsportspodcast@timesdispatch.com. Thanks everyone for listening, and have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.
Country roads,
Oh boy.
take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama,
Harvey's.
take me home. Country roads. Harvey says bye.
Goodbye, everybody.